Relax now, brother. Relax, okay? I know you're feeling a little down in the dumps, but your spirits will be lifted as the teller is now here to talk UFC 303 with you. It's an absolute banger of a card. A lot of things have changed with UFC 303, but one thing that has remained is this fight card is still a highly anticipated fight card with a lot of exciting matchups set to take place. It is worth noting, though, we lost the return of the Mac. Conor McGregor did have to withdraw with this fight against Michael Chandler. It was a major loss. Love him or hate him, you still have to understand that when McGregor is fighting, the world is watching, and he always delivers, man. He goes out there and he looks to make it a real fight. So, with Chandler would have been fireworks. Hopefully that fight ends up happening one day. Who knows? Besides that, I am very upset that Jamal Hill had to withdraw from this card. And now I'm not the first person lining up to the Jamal Hill fan club, but this is another dude that always brings it when he's in the cage, and he's an exciting fighter. And I'm a little upset that we're not going to be able to see him perform. But as I said, this card is still loaded, the headliner. But then we also have a newly added co-main event to this card between Brian Ortega and Diego Lopes. Fireworks. MVP taking on Ian Garry. That's a great fight. Two of the best strikers in the game, not just the division, in the game right now. They are two of the possibly top 10 best strikers in the game, if you ask me, as far as active fighters right now. Cub Swanson and OG taking on Andrei Fili. You got Michelle Waterson on the card. You have the Japanese undefeated prospect who just won the road to UFC taking on Carlos Hernandez. If you don't know about Ray Tsuruya, he's another fighter that has some potential to do some things in the cage representing Japan. Joe Pyfer getting a solid test once again, and Marc-André Barriault. This fight will only be 3 rounds, luckily for him. Payton Talbott, one of the top up-and-coming fighters in the game. That's an exciting one there as well. Let me not just completely overlook Vinicius de Oliveira, who's been making some noise, although he's very new to the game. He's taking on Ricky Simón, a proven fighter in the game. So I'm very excited for this card. We're going to jump right into it. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. You guys, I promise to bring all types of entertaining and quality content towards your guys' way. I'm telling you guys now, I'm working on major upgrades for this channel. So please hit that subscribe button. Like this video. It helps me out a lot. I put a lot of work into tape study. And don't forget, we are powered by BetUS. Make an account through the link in the description. It's right there at the top. Make an account through the link in the description here. You're going to get a 125% match on your first 3 deposits. You definitely want to have that BetUS account rolling into this card. This is a great card to make money on. And if you do sign up through that link, please let me know so I could give you guys a gift heading into this huge card. You guys will love the gift there as well. It will really be worth your while.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
Let's kick this thing off in the featherweight division. We got a banger between Charles Jourdain and Jean Silva. Both of these fighters have shown to be very dangerous in the octagon. Now, in Charles Jourdain's case, he's proven it for a more lengthy period of time. He's a way more established UFC fighter. He's shown to be very well-rounded. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's shown flashes down on the mat. He's gotten submissions in the octagon while also showing he's a very dangerous striker and that he's willing to go to war. He'll brawl it out with you. He has a lot of dog in him, so he checks off a lot of boxes. On the other hand, Jean Silva, kind of making a statement in the cage as of recently, right? Newer to the game, came off Dana White's Contender Series. He's been delivering, getting finishes in the cage, or at least had a finish in his last fight over the Giraffe Goat and Weston Wilson. Big shout out to Weston Wilson, by the way, who shared a post of mine, and I'm happy for him that he got that victory. We talked about the fact we were rooting for him, and big shout out to Weston Wilson there. But he delivered in the cage when he fought Weston Wilson by doing what he should have done, finishing him in the first round. I thought the victory that he had on Dana White's Contender Series was also a very solid showing because I am very high on Kevin Vallejos. I think that's a fighter that will be in the UFC down the line. He was undefeated at the time, and since that loss, already bounced back with 2 victories, I believe representing Argentina. He's a talented fighter, so that was a high caliber fight. Before that, though, Jean Silva does not have the most proven resume, fighting a lot of lower level competition. He's training with the fight nerds, so at least he's surrounding himself with good people. I think he does have a solid ability. I think that he'll prove to be a UFC caliber fighter. But this is going to be a good test for him. This is going to be a big test for him. Charles Jourdain is no slouch. All right, so as I said, I've been a little bit back and forth with who I wanted to settle in for this pick. All right. So this isn't an easy fight. This is a fight that's very close in my eyes. I see this being a fight that delivers for the fans. I think they go to war. The thing I like about Gene Silva in this spot is he's a little bit more simplistic with his striking, but carries serious power and has nasty boxing. And I kind of like the more simplistic striking compared to the more wild and, if you will, a little bit more giraffe striking from Jourdain. Yes, it can be very dangerous. It's very wiry, but he leaves himself out there to be hit at times. And I kind of like the more simplistic and technical striking of Gene Silva, and I think he carries some serious power. And if we were to see a finish in this fight, I actually could see Gene Silva cracking Jourdain as they are in a war and actually finishing Jourdain, which will be the first time that we've ever seen Jourdain knocked out. That would be quite a sight. But I don't think that's out of the realm of happening because they're going to go at it. And we've seen Jourdain already just at the age of 28 years old. We've already seen him put a lot of miles on himself in the cage. He's been in some serious wars, and Gene Silva has shown to be an absolute finisher with 9 knockouts out of his 12 victories. Although some of them, and a lot of the early ones are against lower level competition, he still shows that he knows how to finish a fight and is a dangerous striker. Okay, so I've been back and forth with my selection here, and I know Charles Jourdain is the more proven fighter. And even though he's shown to have that dog in him, one thing I haven't liked about Jourdain as you dive into his resume is he has came up short a lot in those closely contested matches. You think about the Sean Woodson loss he just came off of, a split decision loss there, the Nathaniel Wood performance, the Shane Burgos performance, the Julian Erosa performance where he got finished up in the 3rd round. I got finished late in that fight. The Andrei Fili fight, that was another fight where it was a close one, but he came out on the losing end of it. So, I feel like in those fights where he really has to, dig his feet into the dirt and go to war, he just always seems to be just a little bit of a step behind his opponent. I am going to swap my pickup here. I was initially going to be picking Charles Jourdain, and I'm not. I'm sliding over to Gene Silva. I just think that Silva is going to settle in this fight, and he's really going to take another step up and prove to be a solid fighter. And I really like what the Fighting Nerds are doing over there. Check this line movement out. Over at BetUS, Charles Jourdain opened up as a -210, and he's now a -140 as I'm filming this on the 19th here, June 19th. So we'll see how this line continues to trend, but I would not be surprised if it evens out even more so, because that -210 line on Jourdain was blasphemy. This is a fight that should be much closer. And like I said, I'm going to side with Gene Silva is he going to get that knockout? I'm going to say he gets a knockout. I'm going to say that the crowd's going crazy. This card is getting kicked off in a major way. These guys go to war. And I'm going to say that Silva finds the mark and follows up his last knockout performance with another knockout performance. And I'm going to say he gets a finish in the 2nd or 3rd round. I'm saying a later finish via TKO using his hands, his heavy hands there. So, and as long as the fight lasts, it's going to be exciting. You're not going to want to miss this. But I think that the value is on the dog here, even at this point in time, even with the line movement. Obviously, if you were on Silva nice and early, that would have been great. You could have got him at +170 back on June 12th for all you dudes that like to target lines nice and early. But I would still say with the plus sign next to his name, the value is on Gene Silva. That's going to be a fun one. Now, what are we going to do with this? We got the legend Andrei Arlovski stepping into the cage at the age of 45 years old, taking on Martin Buday, a much younger and fresher fighter at 32, fighter that I haven't been impressed with from the very beginning. Even when he was winning fights, I just haven't been overly impressed with his performances. I don't know if it's his physique in there, it's just the way he moves, but maybe it's the resume that he has, the list of victories. I mean, you go over these names: Chris Barnett, Lucas Bresky, Jake Collier, Josh Parisian, even his victory on Dana White's Contender Series against Lorenzo Hood. I mean, doesn't have any notable victories throughout his career. Came up short in his one big highlight fight where he was taking on Shamil Gaziev. Gaziev finished him up there. That was an official play of ours. Martin Buday, the thing he has going for him, of course, needless to say, is that he has a lot more left to give the fight game. He's a much younger, fresher fighter. And you could argue that he's still cruising into the prime. So we're going to see a better and better version of him every time he steps in there. Because you guys know in the heavyweight division, fighters aren't even peaking till they're about 33, 34 years old. Andrei Arlovski, on the other hand, I mean, this dude just took, 3 L's in a row, getting finished up in 2 of them, submitted by Marcos Rogério de Lima, knocked out by Dontel Mays. That was a bad look for him. He was able to survive against Waldo Cortez Acosta, but still takes another loss there. I don't know if I'm going to be able to bank that he goes back to what he was doing, in 2021, 2022, where he was going in against these lower level fighters and kind of using his maturity and, his high fight IQ and just all the knowledge that he's learned throughout the years to go out there and pull upsets off those lower level fighters. I just don't know if he's going to be able to do what he was doing from 2020 all the way through 2022. I mean, 45 years old, man, that's really up there. And I'll just throw this out there one more time. I've always talked about the time I bumped into Andrei Arlovski at a Home Depot as we were both waiting to get paint. Ironically enough, we're both waiting over by the paint section. And he was there with, I'm assuming this is who he was with. He was with some female's wife, and she was something else, man. She was a stallion. And, as I said then, when you see these fighters in the real world, especially these heavyweights, it's different. It's different when you see these guys. And you got to remember too, this was like 10 years ago or so. So he was, he was like in his physical prime at the time. I mean, this dude, all I'm thinking in my head is imagine like bumping shoulders with him in the Home Depot and getting in a scuffle with a guy like that. I mean, this guy could literally end you in minutes, not minutes, probably seconds. So most of you guys, he probably end you in seconds. I mean, this guy is an absolute beast. And I tip my hat to him. I remember watching Andrei Arlovski from the very beginning. If you think about his fight against like Cabbage Pereira, who was known to be very tough and durable, and Arlovski used him like a punching bag. I tip my hat to Andrei Arlovski because I do believe this is going to be the last time we see Arlovski in the cage. I think he takes this L against the younger, fresher fighter. It's going to be a disappointing loss knowing that he's losing against a guy that if he was in his prime or even something close to his prime in Arlovski, he would run circles around in Martin Buday. And I think that he finally hangs them up. I think the UFC will push him towards that direction. This is a fighter now that has 59 professional fights. Tip of the hat to Arlovski, but I think that he falls a little short. The clunky and meat and potatoes of Martin Buday clunks along just to be a little bit more durable and youthful, and he gets the job done. Now, he opened up on BetUS as a minus 260. He touched minus 300. Now it's coming back the other way, which I think is where the line should be trending, because you shouldn't be really targeting Buday anywhere in the minus 300s. In fact, I wouldn't even be targeting him anywhere in the high 200s. This is still a fight that you could possibly see an upset in. If Arlovski's chin holds up, if he's able to, say he's taking this fight extremely serious because he knows maybe it's his last one. Maybe he's planning on hanging up the gloves regardless. If he could do what he did from 2020 to 2022, which wasn't that long ago, kind of, fight from the outside, doesn't want to take a lot of damage and kind of outpoint Buday from the outside. Don't be shocked if we see Arlovski win a decision. The crowd will be rooting for him. The judges, everyone's going to have respect for Arlovski's name. Don't be shocked if you see a spoiler upset. So my point is, don't mess around with this line here. Okay, maybe we'll talk more about this in the prop edition. Maybe we can get a better line on the Buday by finish, which even then, I don't really want to push you guys towards Martin Buday to get the job done via decision. In the bantamweight division, we have the biggest favorite on this card in Payton Talbott, an undefeated phenom who's showing to be a new breed of mixed martial artists. I would classify him as one of those new up-and-coming type of fighters who's kind of adding a little bit of a hint of something new to the game. He's taking on Yanis Ghemmouri, who made his UFC debut in his last fight, and he was finished up against William Gomis. So fighting a high-caliber fighter, but was finished up in that fight. I just re-watched a fight that he had it was about 4 fights or 3 fights prior to the William Gomis fight. It went to a split decision. It's on YouTube if you want to pull it up, against Vladislav Nowitzki. And that was a fight that I actually thought Nowitzki won that fight. Okay, and he landed big throughout. He landed a lot of heavy leg kicks, and it showed that Ghemmouri is there to be hit, as he did show in his UFC debut as well. In his UFC debut, although some of us may look at him as he's more of a striking-based fighter, he's a fighter that is willing to try to get takedowns. He had about 2.5 minutes of control time against William Gomis, and as he's getting whooped on by Payton Talbott on the feet, do not be surprised if he tries to shoot. I just don't think that he's going to have anything to offer as far as that goes. He's not going to get Talbott down, and even if he did, it wouldn't last longer than a couple seconds. I think Talbott would reverse him, or he'll hurt him very badly as he tries to enter. This is Talbott all day. This dude he's a wild dude. And if you follow him on IG, you see some of the things that he does outside the cage, like he's working on a stripper pole. And I know it may seem weird, but these are things that actually help him in the cage, man. You remember the strike he landed on Dana White's Contender Series? He's a very unorthodox type of fighter. He feels confident that he could pull these types of moves off because he's getting better and better with his takedown defense and grappling. So this is a dude that will hurt you badly on the feet. He'll throw the kitchen sink at you. And this is Payton Talbott via knockout all day. He's a huge favorite. He opened up as a minus 500 on BetUS. He's now a minus 1100. And I wouldn't be shocked if he settles in at like a minus 1400 favorite. I think he gets the finish. This is a fight that we could be talking about on the Prop Edition video. I'm targeting him by finish. We'll see what kind of lines are available as far as that goes. They're going to be high though as well. But Yanis Ghemmouri is probably going to get cut by the UFC after going 0-2 and fighting some tough competition though. William Gomis is no joke and Payton Talbott's no joke. But you guys know what the UFC is about, man. They put you out there and they expect you to cut your teeth against the best of them. You either sink or you swim, and he'll be sinking on the night. Oh boy, in the bantamweight division, Ricky Simón comes into this fight on a 2-fight losing streak, taking on Vinicius de Oliveira, who just made an absolute explosion into the UFC in his last fight. Coming off Dana White's Contender Series, he had that knockout, but in his UFC debut against Sapai, he knocks him out with that flying knee. And throughout that entire fight, I mean, he showed what he's about. This is a dude that looks to go to war. He's a dangerous striker. He's working on his overall game. He's very confident. This dude is lacking no confidence. We saw that from him leading up to that last fight. You saw him at the stare downs, and this dude brings it. Looks to get in his opponent's heads, and I like that about him. I think that he could be a fun addition to this weight class. Now, this is a big step up in competition. Okay, we have to start there. Ricky Simón is a fighter that has some of the best pressure and wrestling in this division. Okay, don't forget what he's about. Just because he's coming off 2 losses, let's not forget what Ricky Simón is about. This dude is a Terminator. He'll march forward and he'll look to take you down and dominate you. And the 2 fighters that he just lost to were very high caliber fighters in Song Yadong and Mario Batista. Before that, was on quite a tear. It's kind of hard to forget his performance against Uriah Faber. That was a fight where he absolutely dropped the ball, kind of froze in the big stage, got cracked by Faber, finished up an older Faber. I think that might have been Faber's last victory in the octagon. Lost to Rob Font. He had a solid victory against Ray Borg, where he was kind of using his size ability, his size advantage to kind of dominate those grappling exchanges, but handled my lightweight and Kelleher. Always got to tip the hat to those dudes that handle my lightweight. If you don't know about that, me and Kelleher used to have a big beef back in the day. But a lot's changed since then. And listen, this is a fight that I'm very torn on, okay? Letting you guys know that right now, because some of you guys may feel, oh yeah, Ricky Simón is the easy pick here. I do not agree with you. Okay, there is a very realistic possibility that Simón goes in there and exposes Vinicius with his grappling. Maybe Vinicius is not up to par with the wrestling and the grappling, gets smashed down on the mat. But I'll tell you what, on the feet, I think Vinicius is way more dangerous. And in a straight striking match, I like Vinicius to get the better of Ricky. And I could see Vinicius stopping him in there. Okay, I've been pulling up a lot of tape on Vinicius throughout the years, and I just kind of want to go over his resume a little bit. He's 20-3, almost has the same record as Ricky Simón. The difference is that Ricky was cutting his teeth in the UFC, where Vinicius has kind of been on the regional scenes or traveling the world a little bit, fighting in different promotions like UAE Warriors. He's been knocked out before, but I'm not overly concerned with what Simón's bringing to him on the feet. I'm worried about the grappling. Okay, you could pull up a solid little fight here that took place back in 2018, where he took on Christian Quinoa as a UFC caliber fighter that also came from Dana White's Contender Series. That fight was a war. Eventually, Christian Quinoa did finish him, but I like the heart that Vinicius showed in that fight. And take note, Vinicius was taken down early in that fight. He worked his way back up, but showed some flaws in his grappling and his takedown defense. Just note that that was back in 2018. That was 6 years ago. He's 20. He was only 22 years old. Okay, this dude is a much different version of himself. And I'm throwing you guys a wild card here. I'm picking Vinicius de Oliveira to get a knockout in this fight. I know it's a risky pick, and I may look bad with this pick because Ricky may go out here and dominate him. But I like what I've seen from Vinicius on the feet. He's a tricky and dangerous striker. And Ricky, as of recently, he's been looking outmatched against fighters that have been bringing danger striking to him. Mario Batista was picking his legs apart, outlanding him. Song Yadong completely outclassed him on the feet. And I know, like I said, those are high caliber fighters, but I don't know, man. This dude Vinicius is going to be game. He's going to show up, and I think he's going to land some big shots. And I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes and right off the rip in the first round. He's so aggressive. Maybe we see something similar to what happened in the Uriah Faber versus Ricky Simón fight. Not the same exact type of overhand, but just where Ricky kind of freezes up a little bit and gets hit with something nasty. And I'll just throw this out there. Maybe we see a Masvidal type flying knee when Ricky looks to change levels and go down. I want to have that documented in case it happens, because I think there's a possibility Vinicius is a wild man and he will be throwing some nasty stuff towards his way. Vinicius de Oliveira opened up as a 2-1 underdog. He was a plus 200 underdog over on BetUS. He's now plus 185. And I think that we may see that line continue to close. I wouldn't be surprised if Vinicius de Oliveira is right around at plus 150. By the time the fight takes place, I think people are going to understand that he's a dangerous fighter. He's a bit of a wild card with his age and needing to see more from him. But he is going to have the ability to hurt Ricky in this fight. And as long as his takedown defense and his get-up game is on par, this is a fight that could play out good for him. Be like Joe, as Dana likes to say, Joe Pyfer, a dude that made a name for himself on Dana White's Contender Series, to say the least. If you guys remember, that was that episode that every single fight was so lackluster and boring besides Pyfer's fight. And Dana went on that rant about be like Pyfer, show up and look to make a name for yourself in the game. And Pyfer has done that. Now, we know he's coming off a very tough loss in a main event highlighted fight against a savvy veteran in Jack Hermanson. That fight is going to do wonders for him in this match here. The amount of experience that he gained in that fight, in that 5-rounder, is going to do wonders for him. Marc-André Barriault is a fighter that pushes the pace in his fights, likes to use his volume and cardio to kind of break guys down. But that fight that Joe just had against Jack Hermanson, going 25 minutes with him and digging so deep, and even when he was gassed out, he was still throwing the kitchen sink at Hermanson. This is going to be a fight where I think he'll be just fine in the third round. No matter what kind of pace Marc-André wants to throw towards his way from the beginning, I think Pyfer will be fine with his cardio and conditioning, even in the third round. Now, skill for skill, he's just a better striker all around. I really am high in the striking ability that he has. I mean, you even saw it in the Hermanson fight. Although he takes the L there, I believe the strikes he was landing early on in that fight finish a lot of guys in this division. And I think that the longer he keeps fighting in the octagon, he's going to be racking up KO after KO. We'll see how he does in the big time fights. We'll see how he does in the future in a main event spot. We'll see how he looks in the 4th and 5th rounds. We'll see a lot from him in the future. But I do expect him eventually to be pushing his way towards a title shot. I mean, that's the type of ability that he has. I'm high on Joe Pyfer. So some of you guys may have turned your back on him after that main event loss against Hermanson. I haven't, to say the least. Still just 27 years old. Spent in the MMA game since he was a kid. Dudes like that, they're very dangerous. The type of fighters that have been in the MMA world from a very young age, you see it. They move differently out there. And a lot of people don't really understand how high caliber his grappling is. He's a well-rounded fighter, nasty jiu-jitsu player, wrestler, striker. He does everything well. Well, on the other hand, Marc-André Barriault is a very tough fighter, great cardio, but he doesn't have the same ability with his movements and whatnot. He's a little bit more Frankenstein-esque, right? A little bit of Franken syndrome, as we like to say here. And I think that Franken syndrome is going to cost him a bit. I think Pyfer is just going to be moving on a different level in there. Check these numbers out. Marc-André Barriault landing 6.19 strikes per minute compared to Pyfer at 3.66. A lot more volume coming from Marc-André. But I'm not worried about that because the difference in the strikes that Pyfer will be landing will add up. The amount of power that he's landing, they'll look better for the judges' scorecards, and they may even catch him a finish in this fight. And also note, look at the amount of strikes Marc-André has been absorbing. So he's a fighter that likes to entertain a war. So he absorbs a lot of strikes too, absorbing 5.67 strikes per minute, while Pyfer just absorbing 3.58. He's a little bit more technically sound. I like Pyfer here. I really like Pyfer here. If this was a 5-round fight, maybe you could point towards Marc-André's way a little bit more so, but in a 3-round fight with Pyfer just coming off that 5-rounder, going to a decision there, I like Pyfer in the spot a lot. Let's see what the line is looking like. On BetUS, he opened up as a minus 210. That was all the way back in, excuse me here, if we can get that. That was back on June 14th. Dipped down to a 230. He's now at minus 255, so the line is dropping heavily. Wouldn't be surprised if he settles in around a minus 300 favorite in this fight. I think that a lot of people are going to be on to what I'm talking about here, understanding that there's not going to be as much time for him to kind of slow down and he's just going to look better than ever. Give me Joe Pyfer to win this fight. Does he find a knockout? We've only seen Marc-André knocked out once before. He's a very durable fighter. He's been in there with some very tough dudes. The last guy to knock him out, the only guy to knock him out was Chidi Njokuani. That was in the first round. I think that we may see him knocked out once again in this fight. I think that Pyfer could finish him up. Pyfer has a 67% finish rate via knockout out of his 12 victories, 8 of them by way of KO. He throws sledgehammers towards guys' faces, and I think that we could see him get a knockout. Give me Joe Pyfer to bounce back with a KO victory in this fight.
Michael Vick here at BetUS.com. Get it all. Huge bonuses, great odds, a race book, live in-game betting, and a casino. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.
So check this out. You guys know how I'm always raving about the flyweight division and how excited I am for it based on the fact that there's all this young talent working its way through it. We'll add Reihi Siura's name to the mix now. This is a kid that's 21 years old, just won the road to UFC, has a decorated wrestling background, and is really showing to pick up MMA very well. He's going to be a big favorite here. He's taking on Carlos Hernandez. Now, a lot of you guys know Carlos Hernandez as a fighter that I like to refer to as a meat and potato type of fighter. Okay, you're coming down for a holiday vacation from college or whatnot, and your mom made you a basic meat and potato type of meal. Now, it's a good meal. It fills the belly up. But Ray Siura is just a whole different type of fighter. Okay, Ray Siura is like you came home from school and your mom surprised you. She's been taking up cooking lessons and she's like frying you up some nice fried high quality sushi. It's crispy, it's tangy, it's spicy, and it just really delights your palate because I like what I see from this kid. Okay. So this is going to be a nice little test for him because I do believe that Carlos Hernandez isn't a bad fighter. And when you look at Carlos Hernandez, who's 30 years old, has a little bit of experience, you take a look at his 2 losses. They're against high caliber competition. Just faced Tatsuro Taira, another young, surging, young Japanese up-and-comer, if you will, although now Taira's already pushing his way towards fighting for the belt. It's kind of crazy how fast he's developed in the UFC, but that loss doesn't look that bad, and that was a KO loss there. He got submitted by Alan Nascimento. Alan Nascimento is a high caliber fighter as well, as far as I'm concerned, a high caliber grappler. Has a victory over Victor Altamirano and Denis Bendar. The Altamirano fight played out very closely. And listen, Hernandez has decent boxing, decent wrestling skills, but I think that Siura is going to be able to get him down to the mat with his wrestling. And not only that, I think he's showing flashes with his striking that he's really starting to develop there. There was a fight that I watched of his. I watched a couple of his fights. A lot of them are on YouTube. One fight that stood out to me, I was quite impressed with him. And this was a fight that took place a while ago. He's only 21 years old. I believe the fight that I was watching might have been the Kenta Kubo fight, which took place in 2021, which you think he was like a teenager at the time. But I mean, it was cool to watch him because he had like the Conor McGregor hairstyle. If you remember when McGregor faced off against Poirier the first time, I believe it was against Poirier, where he had like the braids going back to like that samurai thing sticking up. And I wish Ray Siura would keep that hairstyle because he looked dope out there. And he kind of was trying to implement a similar type of a tactic on the feet. I think he watches McGregor or was watching McGregor back then. He was fighting out of the southpaw stance, light on his feet, kind of working that karate style. And his striking has developed pretty well, if you ask me, for a fighter that comes in with a wrestling background. When you watch him fighting even in some of his more recent fights, he's a fighter that's just always out of range from his opponent. They're missing him by inches, and he's countering nicely. So the ceiling is very high on him. I'm definitely picking Rhea Siura to win this fight. Does he get a finish? Maybe he gets this fight down to the ground and works a finish here. I think it's possible. Probably aiming more towards a decision victory. Carlos Hernandez isn't a horrible fighter, and even though he's been finishing his 2 last losses, was against tough competition. Maybe he weathers the storm. It goes to a decision. Give me Rhea Siura to win a decision here. He can resort to the wrestling. He'll get the better of the striking exchanges. And I think barring he doesn't get caught with a shot that shakes things up, he'll just be the better fighter from the moment the bell rings to the end of it. So he opened up as a minus 390, touched 380, and went back towards a 395. So an up and down. I think people were kind of thinking maybe one thing, and then people are kind of catching on, oh, this dude's the real deal. And I think he settles in is somewhere in the 400 range. I do. I think he'll settle in like around a minus 410, 420. That line's a little high for my liking. it's a high line. What are you going to do with that? Maybe this is a fight that we could talk a little bit more about on the prop edition, but I wish that this line was closer, and maybe I'm hoping that somehow actions comes in on Hernandez and we can get Sierra at a more reasonable line, because that's just too high to work with in a fight like this where he's getting a step up in competition. We'll see how he looks, but he has all the skills to go out there and take over this fight. We got ranked women's strawweight action here. A household name in the game, Michelle Waterson, who may be at the end of the road. Just so you guys know that right now, this could be the last time we see her in there. She's on quite a losing streak, and she's getting up there in age. She's 38 years old, taking on Gillian Robertson, who's been around for a long time and is still only 29 years old, looking better and better every time we see her in there. She'll hit her peak right around 32, 33 years old. So we are high on what we've been seeing from Gillian Robertson as she comes in off a solid performance where she finished up Polyana Viana, who Viana is a little bit of an underrated fighter as well. That's a solid victory there. Showcasing the grappling once again. Before that, she did have an L against Tabitha Ritchie, but Tabitha Ritchie is a dangerous fighter, a fighter that has a lot more to offer the game than a Michelle Waterson, and I'm not really too down on Gillian for losing that fight. Submitted Pereira Rodriguez before that, submitted Maria Agapova, lost to JJ Aldrich before that, and I want to highlight that fight. We'll circle back to that in a minute because I'll talk about some things in that fight that could benefit Waterson if she could implement similar tactics. But Gillian Robertson, you're hungover on a Sunday and you head over to Steak and Shake and you go grab a strawberry milkshake. I mean, that's what she's all about there. You guys know I've referred to her as the strawberry milkshake, always coming in with the red hair. And she's a grappling based fighter, just so you guys understand. If you don't, of course, a lot of you guys know that already, but she really flashes with her grappling. I want to see her use her grappling in this fight, get this fight down to the mat, or I think that she can get a TKO stoppage or a submission over Michelle Waterson. I really think she can get a finish in this fight. Waterson was just finished by Marina Rodriguez down in the mat, right? She was ground and pounded by Rodriguez. She was submitted by Amanda Lemos. And you're seeing Michelle Waterson's fighting ability drop off a cliff with the age, because she went in there, went to a decision with Marina Rodriguez, and it was somewhat of a competitive fight the first time around. Then she gets finished in the rematch that takes place 2 years later. Okay, so 2 years later, she's looking to not be elevating her game, which is to be expected because she's getting up there in age. If she's going to have success in this fight, she'll have to use her striking, keep this fight standing, and try to outpoint Gillian on the feet. And that's why I was referring to that Aldrich fight, where Aldrich kind of got the better of the striking exchanges, keep the fight standing. I don't think Waterson's going to be able to do that. She's going to bounce out of the rankings. She's going to work her way into retirement. And then she could look to do other things outside the cage. I mean, she has that kind of name for herself. She has the look. She has the personality. I first remember getting to know what she was about when she was on Bully Beatdown. Okay, this was a chick that was on Bully Beatdown when she was just a little girl, man. She was probably like 20 years old. Who knows how old she was at the time. And she was an atom weight champion outside of the UFC. If you guys remember, man, Michelle Waterson was a fighter that everybody was talking about. Real hardcore fans, we knew about her. She was fighting over an Invicta. Right, she was an Invicta. She was the atom weight champion over there, and everybody was talking about how she would look eventually if she came over to the UFC. She was on the she got submitted in Invicta, then went to the Ultimate Fighter, where she had a victory over Angela Magana, if you remember that piece of work, and then had a victory over Paige Van Zandt, and then the rest was history, man. She carved out a name for herself. She's had some very fun fights. She's a warrior. I think that she falls short in this fight, and Gillian Robertson actually gets a finish, and I think she gets a sub or a TKO down in the mat with her grappling. She's the much more naturally larger fighter, and Gillian's really been showcasing she knows how to use her grappling and size in the cage. Gillian opened up as a 218 on BetUS, and she's now flat -200. Not an extremely steep line, because you understand it's a women's strawweight fight, and some of those you got to be careful with, but I'm not opposed to targeting Gillian even at a -200 line. Maybe it even comes down as it continues to trend that way. You catch her at -190, and that would be nice. -185. I like Gillian to get a finish. Featherweight action here. Two household names. Cub Swanson taking on Andrei Fili. Two dudes that are very well known in the game. Coming out of California. I believe Swanson's from Cali as well. I don't believe they ever really trained together or never were really in the same circle. Andrei Fili being a team alpha male dude. Cub Swanson bouncing around. But I know he's a dude that's put in work with, as of recently, with guys like Dillashaw, and the Spaniard that was over in Bellator, who's had a really successful career as well. I know he's kept himself around some solid guys in the game. And, I just caught an interview with him on the Jackson podcast. I don't know if anybody watches the Jackson podcast, comment below, but I've been really into some of the interviews they've been doing. I'd love to network with them and work with them. And I'm really liking the way that Rampage has had a new presence, in the fight game on the mic and whatnot. I think he's been doing great on the mic. And maybe if somebody knows Rampage, I can get it out to him. Tell him to unblock me in IG, because I think he blocked me from a long time ago when I used to chirp at these guys a lot. But I'm actually a Rampage fan, but I don't know what he would have blocked me on either. Sensitive dude there. But Cub Swanson was just on the Jackson podcast. And if you really want to know what Swanson's about, that's a great way to know what he's about. He's a stud. He's a warrior. He's been in this game for a long time. He's 40 years old. I got to know Swanson in the fight game way back in the day when he was fighting in the WEC. I mean, I was watching him when he was fighting guys like Mika Miller, which Mika Miller and his brother trained at the old school American Top Team, which was right down the street from my house. They both eventually were right by my old house, but they built a new facility. But back in the day, they had like more of like a little warehouse type of gym. And the Miller brothers, I believe was it Cole Miller, Mika Miller, if you guys remember them, and they're OG fighters. But anyways, fighting over in the WEC. Really, the way that everyone kind of started to know about him was when he got hit with that flying knee by Jose Aldo within just 8 seconds. Okay, that wasn't a good look for him, and for him to get finished that way. But that was such a household fight, such a huge fight. By the way that it finished, everyone put eyes on that fight, and then they kind of saw this dude Swanson all tatted up, and I think people started to kind of see what he was about after that. Now, I had already known what he was about before that, so that performance from him didn't really make me look down upon him so much, because I knew he was a warrior with solid boxing skills, solid boxing ability, and he has shown that throughout the years. I mean, this is a dude that has a knockout victory over Charles Oliveira, Ross Pearson back in the day, Dustin Poirier, Jeremy Stevens. Okay, he has a lot of solid victories on his name. Tsuruya Kawajiri was a big Japanese fighter who came into the UFC for a little stint. His fight with Duho Choi, that's in the UFC Fight Hall of Fame. He beat the GOAT, the greatest of all time, in Artem Lobov. So, I mean, he's had huge performances. He's had some ups and downs, to say the least, but he's a legend in his own right, and I have a great deal of respect for him. But he's 40 years old now. He's taken on Andrei Fili, which Andrei Fili has his own question marks, because he's coming off a brutal knockout loss against Dan Ige. Okay, that wasn't a good look, to say the least, and you got to have some question marks about his chin. And Cub Swanson's going to be throwing some nasty boxing strikes right towards his chin again. So does he get knocked out in this fight? Is the chin starting to get weathered? Andrei Fili's a dude he's been brutally knocked out throughout the years, right? He was knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito. How can we not mention the knockout loss that he had against Yair Rodriguez back in 2016? Or he had his head kicked off his shoulders there. I mean, so there's a lot of wear and tear on Andrei Fili. So just because he's 33 years old and 7 years younger, don't necessarily think that he's just going to be the way more durable fighter, because these guys are going to go to war, and either man can be knocked out in this fight. Okay, I think this is going to be a high-paced fight, and I would love to settle in with the Cub Swanson pick, because I'm rooting for him for sure. I like Swanson, and I'm rooting for him to win this fight. But I got to keep it professional here. As you guys know, we try to keep it professional with our picks. And I like Andrei Fili as well, but I got to lean towards Andrei Fili's way. I just think that he could have a lot of success with his kicking game, working the leg kicks. We saw Swanson struggle with that throughout his career, and specifically recently as well, where he had his legs chewed up against Jonathan Martinez. Was eventually finished by Jonathan Martinez, bounced back with a solid victory over Hakeem Dawodu. But I think that Fili can have success from the outside, especially if he fights an intelligent fight and doesn't just brawl it out, but uses his length, which he'll have a 4-inch reach advantage. He'll have a leg reach advantage as well. He's the taller fighter, has longer legs. He needs to fight from the outside and change levels, mix things up. But this is going to be a dog fight. But give me Andrei Fili, who opened up as a -185, and this line, look at this line over on BetUS. It's 185, 190, 185, 192, 192. It's there. You guys got some people are going back and forth with this action here, but let's just say, right, the line is settling in at -190, 185. I think that Cub Swanson's a live dog here. I still like being on the Fili side, but you're almost paying 2-to-1 odds on it. It's not a line that necessarily stands out to me. I kind of like the dog value on Swanson, actually. I do. I think there's more value on the dog line at Swanson, which is at +160. I think there's more value on the dog here, but I slightly lean Fili's way. The age advantage he has does help him. You guys are not going to want to miss the content that I'll have coming your guys' way on social media, specifically Instagram at MMA Fortune Teller _, but also on Twitter at the MMA Teller. Make sure you run over there and go follow me. I'm creeping up on 10,000 followers on IG. You guys know I've been hustling hard to hit that 10K mark. If you can help me out, it'd mean a lot to me. And also note, if you want to work with me for my official plays for this card, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Shoot me a DM on Instagram while you're following me over there, or email me, that's scrolling below, or shoot me a message on Twitter, and I'll give you further details. This is a card that you are not going to want to miss as far as work with me, because we are going to be cashing on this card. I have some major targets for the event. In the welterweight division, as I said in the intro, both of these fighters, I have them in the top 10 as far as the best strikers in the MMA world right now. Okay, so anytime you got two top 10 strikers facing off with each other in a fight that really should just play out on the feet, I think both men welcome a striking match. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And even if it's not just a brawl, or if we don't see a knockout, doesn't matter, because if you're a real fight fan, you should just enjoy what you're watching. It's very high caliber striking. Now, a lot of you guys surprised me and MVP's UFC debut as he was an underdog. You guys know I was able to capitalize getting him at underdog odds. I gave it as a free play. I gave that out as a free play here on the channel. It's documented on my IG. I have it posted. I have it pinned, I think, still. I mean, I told all of you guys to hammer MVP at dog odds. It was crazy that you were able to get him there. I don't know if a lot of you guys aren't familiar with that, what MVP was doing throughout the last years over in Bellator. Maybe some of you guys are just more UFC type of fans, but MVP is a fighter I've been watching from the very beginning. Man, he is nasty, and hopefully, maybe some of you guys were looking too much into the Mike Perry bare knuckle fight. That's a different type of fight, man. That was a straight boxing fight. MVP is a dude that sets up his overall striking with his kicks and everything. So he has that karate point style fighting, and he's pretty much, him and Stephen Thompson are the best to do that in the cage. And I mean, just go check his line of work, man. This guy has some of the best highlight reel knockouts that I've ever seen, you know, cracking people's forehead bones like he did to Cyborg, cracking his cranium. And this guy is a dangerous dude. I think he's shown growth with his overall game too, weathering the storm against Logan Storley in a fight a lot of people thought he should have won. Getting back, working his way back up to his feet when taken down. But I don't think Ian Garry is going to be doing that. Ian Garry, like I said, will welcome a striking match. Ian Garry is a phenomenal striker. You guys know I'm not a fan of Ian Garry's personality. I mean, this dude is... I don't really want to go into that too much because just, you know, for specific reasons, but he's not my kind of guy, to say the least. The way he carries himself in and outside the octagon. I don't like the choice words he had for Neil Magny. I really don't like the way that he disrespected Magny and tried to make false accusations about who Magny is and characterize him in a certain way. I think he deserved something for that. And Neil Magny's just too humble, too good of a guy to do what he should have done. But Ian Garry, this is not my kind of guy for what he's does, how he handles himself outside the cage in a variety of ways. He's a phenomenal fighter though. And I'm not shy to admit like what this dude's about. I mean, this is a guy that's going to have a lot of success in this division, and he's a dark horse in this division to eventually get his hands on the gold. Very high fight IQ, nasty striking. And in a striking affair like this, I actually think he's going to get the better of the striking exchanges against MVP. So we don't have a lot of numbers to go off of as far as MVP goes. It's just off that one fight where he had a good ratio, but he wasn't landing an extreme amount of strikes. Ian Garry landing 6.27 strikes per fight, or excuse me, per minute while he's in the octagon. MVP was at 3.14 in that last fight. Ian Garry only absorbing 3.49. Great ratio there. MVP only absorbing 1.6 in his fight. Wasn't even getting touched. The thing is, I'm very well versed with MVP, and I've seen some of the flaws, if you will, that he's had in his game throughout the years, and he's been vulnerable to leg kicks. Okay, and I think Ian Garry could have a lot of success with his leg kicks here. MVP will be more twitchy, and he'll be all wiry and herky-jerky. He'll be unpredictable out there. Ian Garry will be a little bit more simplistic with his high-level striking, and I think that simplistic striking is going to pay dividends. He's going to chew MVP's legs up, and if MVP gets a little bit too reckless, I could see Ian Garry getting a knockout in this fight. If you remember the Douglas Lima knockout that he had over MVP, where he chopped the legs down and eventually caught him with that nasty hook as he was on the mat, like kind of getting up from the mat. I think if Ian Garry really wants to press the action, he could find a knockout in this fight. But all in all, I'm going to say Ian Garry wins a decision victory. I'm going to say this does go to the judges' scorecards. It's a very entertaining fight, but I think Ian Garry gets the better all in all throughout the fight. So he's at a -130 right now. Opened up as a -135 on BetUS. He's at a -130. This is a fight that's capped very close. MVP's line is very similar to what it was in his last fight. He's at slight dog odds, This time I'm on the other side of the fence here. I think Ian Garry gets the job done, and he can start to change his name from the future. Well, he can change it to a couple of different things, but we'll keep it PG. But he can change his name to something that's more present now. This dude's here. Okay, he's at the top of he's creeping up to the top of the mountain, and we're going to be talking about some huge fights for Garry after this one. So somehow this fight snuck onto the main card of this huge event. You know, the UFC trying to show some diversity throughout the card. I don't really have a problem with that, but I don't know. I think there's a couple other fights that could have been on the main card above this. It's not a bad fight. Both these fighters are high caliber for the division. They have a lot of similarities. It's a solid matchup. It's a very even matchup, even though the line doesn't necessarily say that. But I'm in disagreement. Macy Chaisson's a dangerous fighter. She's a fighter that has shown to have a high ceiling from the very beginning. She's had some ups and downs. Dating back to when she was a huge favorite against Lena Landsberg, and she was controlled against the cage for the entire fight, cost a lot of people money, but she bounced back with a couple victories there. She did get submitted by Raquel Pennington. It's a high caliber fighter who just defeated Mayra Bueno Silva in her last fight. So, and then but here's the thing. So she was submitted by Rocky, and then she was also finished by Irene Aldana. If you remember that nasty up kick that kind of hit her in the liver, she was finished up. So she's shown some signs of when she loses fights, she's there to be finished. And Mayra Bueno Silva is a fighter that has some finishing abilities, the majority of them coming by way of submission. She's very crafty down on the mat. Maybe Bueno Silva can find a finish here. I would say if there's a finish in this fight, it's coming by way of Silva landing a nasty strike or following it down to the mat and getting some type of submission, something like that. But all in all, I think that Macy Chaisson is the fighter that should get her hand raised in this fight. I don't say it with an overwhelming amount of confidence, but the Fortis MMA product's been looking good in the cage. She's cruising into the prime of her career. She's very confident right now. If you've seen interviews with her leading up to her fight, she's very confident. And she's a fighter that's been a little bit of a head case, I think, in the past. If you remember, there was a couple fights where she was talking about that and different things, talking about her own confidence going into fights. She was making excuses about certain situations. And I think that she's grown as a fighter, as we all do. We all grow, and she's training over at Fortis MMA. She's been there for a long time, and it's a solid gym to prepare at. And she's been looking really good in the cage. And just to highlight some of her work, she just submitted Pani Kianzad. She had a victory over Norma Dumont in between some of those losses there. And Norma's a good fighter. Okay, so put some stock on that Norma victory. And other than that, not a lot of high level victories, but she's been going in there and getting the job done for the most part. And I'm going to actually pick Macy Chaisson to win this fight, which she is the underdog here. She's a plus 170, no line movement as of now over at BetUS. She's a plus 170 underdog. I think there's some value next to her name here. Mayra's not a slouch, and I don't want to be too down on her for her last performance, but she was kind of out of that fight. And she had some little signs of resurgence when she was down, but she's kind of, I don't know. She was kind of in that fight, she wasn't looking that good in that fight. She kind of like knew she was out of it, but showed some little attacks here and there. But if Macy Chaisson can go in there and kind of bully this fight, I think that Mayra Bueno Silva will kind of fall into place and she'll take an L. So I'll give me Macy Chaisson via decision.
This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
All right, guys, up to the light heavyweight division. If you guys are wondering why I may look a little different in this segment, wearing a different shirt, might have some crust in between my eyes. It's nice and early, and I just woke up and I'm redoing this bout because this scheduled slot has been crazy. As a lot of you guys probably know already, this graphic really describes what's been going on. Initially, it was supposed to be Jamal Hill taking on Khalil Roundtree. Khalil Roundtree accidentally took a banned substance, and he pretty much recognized that he did himself beforehand. So he noticed the UFC, and he was unfortunately not able to make the fight because of that incident. Then Jamal Hill was set to take on Carlos Ulberg, which was actually my favorite matchup between the four fights that have been scheduled in this slot. I was really looking forward to the Jamal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg fight. I feel like that fight really meant a lot to this division. Jamal Hill then gets injured. He has to pull out. And then we have a new matchup of Anthony Smith and Ulberg, which were two fighters that were not even supposed to be fighting on this card initially. And then some very recent and breaking news, Carlos Ulberg has to withdraw from the slot, and now it's Anthony Smith taking on Roman Dolidze. Okay, so Roman Dolidze, obviously a middleweight fighter, bumping up to the light heavyweight division. I don't think that's going to be that bad of a move for him because I've always looked at him as a larger middleweight fighter. I felt that he has a solid frame, and I think he could put some muscle. I think he could pack some more muscle on, or pack a little bit more weight onto his frame. I mean, you see here he has a 76-inch reach, which is the same as Anthony Smith's. He's 2 inches shorter, but just I don't think he'll be as undersized as maybe some of you guys think he will be. Remember, Anthony Smith was a long-time middleweight fighter. He filled into the light heavyweight division just fine. I think Roman Dolidze has all that type of potential. And if you guys were wondering my thoughts, because I did this whole segment on that initial bout between Carlos Ulberg and Anthony Smith. Since we're talking about Anthony Smith here, I had Carlos Ulberg finishing him in the first round. I was very emphatic about that. I was on all over this mic just yesterday talking about how Ulberg is going to starch Anthony Smith in the first round. And guess what? I'm going to give you guys a very similar pick. I'm going to say Dolidze gets a knockout here. And I'll tell you why. Anthony Smith is a fighter. Yes, he's a well-rounded fighter. He has solid grappling. And maybe he tries to use some of his grappling and jiu-jitsu skills here, but Roman Dolidze is no slouch in that department at all. And I just think that Anthony Smith has been there to be hit, and I'm not putting that much stock into that submission he just pulled off against Vitor Petrino. Vitor Petrino, obviously a stud, up-and-coming fighter, but Petrino made a mistake. He got caught in the guillotine, and I believe that was a guillotine, right? Yep. Got caught in that guillotine. And, if I think some of you, or maybe not, maybe some of you guys are in agreement. You guys comment below, let me know. I think that we kind of understand that was a little bit fluky. Okay. I mean, you look at the fight before that, got starched by Khalil Roundtree. The victory he had over Ryan Spann before that was an official play of mine on Anthony Smith. Caught it at dog odds. Okay. But I'll be very honest about that fight. That could have went either way. And I didn't like the damage Anthony Smith was taking in that fight. He's there to be hit on the feet. We've seen him take a lot of damage throughout the years, was knocked out by Magomed Ankalaev back in 2022. That is, in my opinion, the uncrowned champ of the division. His time will come. If you guys want to talk about that, meet me in the comment section below this video. We could talk more about that because in IG, that's been the topic of conversation. But that's a conversation that we will be having down the line. So Magomed Ankalaev is the uncrowned champ of this division. I've been saying that for a long time. Okay. All right. He was on a nice little 3-win streak here. But I mean, over Jimmy Crute, Devin Clark, and Ryan Spann, which you could argue Spann got redemption as of late. Teixeira put such a beating on him back in 2020. You guys remember that his teeth were falling out of his face. I just think that Anthony Smith is defensively vulnerable. He looks a little lethargic in there at times. And I think that Roman Dolidze will have potential to finish him and knock him out. Being that he's the smaller fighter, right? The middleweight fighter, he's coming up in weight. I actually think that could benefit him in a way with his movement and his speed. And I think all he has to do is just touch that chin a little bit. And I think we can see Anthony Smith really hurting in this fight. Of course, Roman Dolidze, one of the few Georgian studs in the UFC. As you see here, Ilia Topuria, Merab Dvalishvili, two absolute studs. You guys know the Georgians can scrap. And that is, this is the brother of Topuria, Alexandre Topuria as well, who's a pro fighter. So Roman must have been eating his string beans and broccoli, though, and these dudes may have been avoiding the veggies or something. But, listen, there's no betting line on this fight right now, which I think that makes it even more exciting. I think that's fun. So you guys, a lot of you guys will be hearing this, probably most of you guys will be hearing this prediction after the line has been announced. So let's see if I'm right or not. But I wouldn't be surprised if Roman Dolidze comes into this spot as the favorite. I think it'll be a very close line. But remember, Anthony Smith was taking this fight initially on short notice as well. Okay, so they're both taking the fight on short notice. And we'll see how the line is looking. I'm going to say this is a very close line. A very close line. Almost pick 'em odds here. And that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I'm on Roman Dolidze one way or another. Even if Roman is a dog here, I would value that even more. So I would like that. I would take that plus money. And you take a look at what Dolidze has been doing. A very toughly fought match against Nasruddin Imavov, who I'm very high on. You guys know I'm high on Imavov. I think he's a tactician. Just had another big victory over a proven top-ranked fighter in Jared Cannonier. Went 5 rounds with him. He had his moments in that fight. The Marvin Vettori fight, some people thought he should have won that fight. I don't. I think Vettori won the fight, but he landed power shots throughout that fight, had a good display of himself. Before that, was knocking dudes out left and right. Knocked out Hermanson, Phil Hawes, Kyle Dawkins. Had a victory over Loreno Staropoli. The fight against Trevin Giles was a very close match as well, and that's another fight where people debated who won that fight. So that was a close match there. I mean, he's legit, and I think that he could find the mark here. I know, I don't know, but I mean, I know he did just have a kid recently. which good for him. He's doing the family thing these days, but I don't think he has too many distractions. I'm not exactly sure what was going on, but I think that our old friend there, if you guys remember, the one that used to be with the South African there, Bays, JP Bays, Cheyenne Vlismus. I think Cheyenne Vlismus is with Roman. I don't know. I know she had a kid recently too. Is that I know there was all these rumors. You guys know all that stuff that was going on back in the day, but not that any of that matters. My pick is Roman Dolidze to get a finish in this fight, and looks to be in good shape. This was back in April, but I mean, this is a dude that stays training, and I think he gets the job done. No official line, so can't tell you where the value is, but I'm telling you, hypothetically, the value is on Dolidze. If he comes in as a dog, and even at pick 'em odds, I would still say there's value there. I don't think he will be, but if he's minus 140, 150, that's maybe a little bit of a stretch, taken on short notice. Let's see where this line's at. What an addition to the card this fight is. It's a great co-main event. It spices up the card, to say the least. Diego Lopes taking on Brian Ortega. A lot of people are categorizing this fight as a fight where the winner is going to showcase to have the best jiu-jitsu in this division. I'm not necessarily arguing with you guys that are saying that, but this fight is just so much more than just that, because these guys have really showcased their striking as of recently. Their striking has really evolved throughout the years. First off, Diego Lopes comes off a nasty KO victory over Sadiq Youssef, who's going in there and finishing Youssef like that. Knocked out Pat Sabatini before that. He showcased his jiu-jitsu against Gavin Tucker, and that's really what we knew about him as he worked his way into the UFC. At least I kind of knew him as an aggressive striker, but a dude that was very dangerous on the mat. But he's shown to be so much more. Now, a lot of what I just said, you could say the same for Brian Ortega, one of the best jiu-jitsu players we've ever seen in the cage. He's a Gracie product. I remember watching tape of him grappling like two dudes at the same time. This was like when he first came into the UFC and was starting to make a name for himself. I mean, he's really high caliber down on the mat, and but his striking has come so far. The boxing skills that he possesses, he's really worked hard on his boxing skills, and he's dangerous there as well. Now, if you take a look at Brian Ortega's resume, you're going to see that he's been finished in 67% of his losses, right? He's been finished in 2 of his 3 losses. And I would say that does not define him as a fighter, to say the least, because first off, one of his TKO losses was an injury against Yair Rodriguez, which he bounced back and showed how that fight really should have went. Okay. I was very disappointed to see it. I was rooting Yair on, had action on him. Brian Ortega was the superior fighter in there when that fight actually played out. So the first time where he was injured, that's not really a TKO loss. And then the other fight against Max Holloway, they had to stop it after the 4th round, and he did not want that fight to be stopped, and he wasn't going to get finished in that fight unless somebody threw the towel in or the doctors had to stop it. He took a severe amount of damage, but Ortega is super tough, man. Okay, his other loss was by way of Alexander Volkanovski, weathering the storm, getting beat up, but never looking for a way out of that fight. He's so durable, which that element of the game makes this fight so exciting, because Diego Lopes is going to throw the kitchen sink at him. He's going to be so aggressive. But what's going to happen when he doesn't get Ortega out of there? I think this fight's going to be a war. With that being said, throwing you guys a curveball here, man. Lopes is an absolute fight finisher, and I think he is going to find a way to get Ortega out of there. I think it's going to be a very high-paced fight. I don't know exactly how he's going to do it. It's going to get crazy in there. It's hard to bank on a submission victory for Lopes, because Ortega has never been finished via sub, and he's so high caliber defensively. The only way I see that happening is if Ortega's so beat down, he's so brutally hurt with the ground and pound, maybe a rear naked choke is just sunk in, as he's just so destroyed in there. But all in all, I'm going to say that there's a TKO stoppage in this fight where Ortega's hurt really badly, and the referee kind of has to jump in, and Ortega might protest it. But Lopes finds a finish in this fight, because as soon as this fight kicks off, Lopes is going to slam his foot on the gas pedal, and he'll be vulnerable to being finished himself, because Ortega is very dangerous. Diego Lopes has shown that he has really good cardio. He's not going to fade and crumple like Yair Rodriguez just did in Ortega's last fight. We saw that from him in the Movsar Evlovojev fight. Took that fight on short notice in his UFC debut, and was in that fight all the way to the last second of the fight against Evlovojev, who was pushing the pace of the grappling. So Lopes has great conditioning, great cardio, and I like Lopes to get the job done. And it's so interesting to see a fighter that came into the UFC off of a off of a loss, right? Off of a loss. Excuse me here. We'll scroll back to it real quick. Well, yes, it was off of a loss. He had a loss on Dana White's Contender Series. Follow that up with another loss on the regional scene at Fury FC against Nate Richardson. But as soon as he made his way into the UFC, it's like he put everything together, and you just see the ability that he has. And I'm high on the ability of what I'm seeing from him. So I think he's the truth, and I think that he's just a fighter that's really putting it together right now. And we've seen extreme growth from him in the last 2 years. So give me Diego Lopes to get a TKO finish. He's a minus 135 against Brian Ortega right now, with action going the other way. He opened up as a minus 155. People throwing some action towards Ortega's way. I get it. Ortega's been looking good. You're getting dog value on him. This is a tough one here. I'm not super confident in Lopes, but I like him to get the job done. I do like him to get the job done. I like being on his side. I wouldn't press it as far as the betting line goes, but it's getting really close. So minus 135, and if it dips to 130, 125, I don't have a problem with the Lopes line. That's where I would rather be with this fight. I'd rather be on Diego Lopes on the money line, as it's nice and low.
This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
Here we go, guys. We got the rematch set to take place once again for the light heavyweight championship of the world. Alex Pereira taking on Hiri, right? We're not saying Giri. We got to put that little bit of Portuguese slang, like we say Pereira, Hiri, Prochazka. I mean, this fight is absolute fireworks. I love this matchup. I know we just saw this fight take place, and you could sit here and argue, oh, the fight's going to take place the same type of way, because Alex is such a refined striker. He's one of the best strikers that we've ever seen in the game. And Prochazka is a fighter that relies on his durability too much, and he takes too much damage as he looks to eat one to set up his finishing shot. And it's kind of a bad stylistic matchup, because a dude like Pereira will just finish you up, right? And that's what he did the first time around. Okay, I understand we could go that route with this, with kind of summarizing this fight. But if you want to be honest about this fight, and the betting line kind of summarizes that, it's that Yuri is extremely dangerous, okay? He's an extremely dangerous fighter, and he will be live to land a knockout shot in this fight, okay? We've seen Alex lose rematch fights in MMA before, right? After having a stellar victory, a finished victory, in the rematch, we've seen him starch before, right? Of course, I'm talking about the Israel Adesanya fight. That's something you guys need to remember. I'm not saying this fight's going to play out like that necessarily, but Prochazka is just so damn dangerous. I mean, what's going to happen if he's able to weather the storm, eat some of those big strikes from Pereira, and kind of close the distance and just lands a huge strike or some type of spinning elbow or something wild, and Pereira gets flatlined? Because Pereira is there to be hit. Okay, he is there to be hit. He's a very refined striker, but we've seen him get tagged here and there. You know, he keeps his hands a little low at times. The chin is there. He has a big old noggin. All right, there's a huge landing mark. And I want to say that I will not be shocked at all if Prochazka gets redemption in this fight and gets a knockout victory. This dude's spirit is ridiculous. The victory that he just had over Alexander Rakic was one of the most entertaining fights that I've ever seen. The way he weathered the storm, took all that damage, continued to march forward until he eventually broke down Rakic. The issue is that Pereira is just a much more dangerous striker, a much more dangerous fighter than a Rakic is. And he has more confidence in there, and his hook is just so tight. And I think that he's going to crack Prochazka with another hook, and he's going to finish him up. I know a lot of you guys have felt the first fight was an early stoppage, and I wouldn't argue with you on that. I would say that I think that Pereira was on his way to getting the finish regardless in there. You didn't really see Prochazka arguing it, but he probably wouldn't argue it regardless. He's a humble dude. And what's everybody saying now? Chama. That's all he says, right? It's Chama. And he's a fun dude. Alex is the type of dude I think I would love to go hit the bars up with or something like that. I don't know if he drinks or whatnot, but he looks like he likes to enjoy himself. He likes to party. He's been driving around down under in Australia, cruising around in speedsters. I mean, this dude is just he's a wild dude. It seems like he has a good sense of humor, and he has a little bit of that Fedor mystique to him, right? Doesn't talk often. He's kind of stone-faced, and I'm a big fan of Pereira. So I'm a big fan of both these fighters. I cannot wait for this fight. I have Alex Pereira doing what he did in the first fight, getting the knockout once again, and that's how I see the fight going down. So Alex Pereira opened up as a minus 165 favorite on BetUS. He's now a minus 160. Action coming the other way. It's kind of intriguing. I would rather be on the Alex Pereira side of things. even if the line went up to like 180, I'm still on Alex, and the line seemed to dip down. I get it because there is that threat from Yuri, but defensively, he's just a little too flawed for my liking. And just to go over the numbers here, Giri Prochazka is absorbing 5.43 strikes per minute. Okay. Well, Alex just at 3.65. Alex dishing out 5.1. Well, Prochazka dishing out 5.75. Just to go over some of those numbers, but Prochazka is there to be hit. And I think that in this division with the danger striker like Alex, it's going to be night. And I think this one actually may be a little bit more definitive, where you actually see him get flatlined, knocked out. He might weather the storm, eat some shots early, but one of them is going to land and it's going to be bad. Okay, so give me the refined striker and what should be a war. We'll see if Prochazka tries to change levels and go to the grappling, but I hear that Alex is looking better and better down in the mat every day. He's getting belted in jiu-jitsu, man. They're ranking him higher and higher. And how can you just bank on this to be a 25-minute fight where Prochazka is just constantly going to the grappling? I mean, there could be some wild scrambles like we saw in the Glover-Teixeira fight. Maybe he could sneak in a rear naked choke in a war. But I think there's going to be too much time on the feet where the inevitable strike is going to be landed by Alex Pereira. So give me him to get the job done. And I like the value on his money line. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up UFC 303. It's going to be a great night. I want to wish all you guys a profitable event. I hope you guys all do well. Remember, if you want to work with me, you can reach out to me. I'll let you guys know what plays I'm targeting for this event. Shoot me a message on Twitter or Instagram or email me. I really appreciate all your guys' support. As you guys can see, I'm grinding over here, and I'm looking to make a couple moves here to take this channel to the next level. Any of your guys' support would really mean a lot to me. If any of you guys know other friends of yours that watch MMA, that they don't even have to bet on MMA, because especially as you guys will see, I'm going to really have a diverse amount of content just revolved around MMA. It's not just going to be strictly betting. So if you guys could let them know about the channel, share this content anywhere, and just kind of help get my subscriber count up, or just please, if you're liking these videos, it means a lot to me. Catch me on social media. I really appreciate you guys so much. I'm not going to go on with any deep parting words here. I'll keep it simple. All right. When it comes to betting on MMA and betting on sports, make sure you guys are careful out there. You're balanced. Make sure you're not chasing your losses. Make sure you guys are working with a bankroll that you are willing and able to lose. All right, guys. I don't want to see you guys out there on the streets kicking cans because you put your account on Prochazka or something like that. So, if you need to lower the amount of units that lower your unit amount, do whatever you need to do to budget betting on MMA and betting on sports in general. Don't push it too much, because you guys can put yourself in a bad position. And you guys know right now, things are tough, right? Things are expensive, and every dollar counts and matters to all of us. So I understand that, unless you guys are, some high rollers out there and you got a bunch of money. In that case, good for you, but we're all not at that point. You know what I mean? I'm comfortable, but every dollar matters. So be careful out there, guys. All right. Don't chase your losses. Take nice deep breaths, relax, like we do when we kick these videos off. Just relax, and things will always be good. It might be a little tough the first day or the second day after you had a tough losing a night or whatnot, but slow things down, and you won't have that urge to chase as much if you let things settle down, and then you could kind of be a little bit more methodical with what you want to do. So I hope you guys are all being smart and safe out there. Eat healthy, take care of yourself. Signing out, Teller.
Welcome to the show, this the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.